Forever. Dog.
Oh, yes. Yes. Welcome to Movie Dog. Another week of Movie Dog. And I'll tell you what, I cannot wait. To talk about the new movies Send Help, directed by the great Sam Raimi, and Shelter, the new Jason Statham movie, both of which I saw at the AMC 16 in Burbank last Saturday night. My beloved AMC 16 Burbank, which is currently being watched over, haunted, you might say, by a massive, it must be at least 3 stories tall, advertisement for the documentary Melania, which also hit theaters this weekend. Melania, a documentary about Melania Trump, the first lady. And this advertisement, this poster, you might have seen it. There's only one poster for the movie. And not surprisingly, they went with a plagiarized aesthetic. It's very Steve Jobs, very Apple 2007. It's like if Johnny Ive art directed Triumph of the Will. That's kind of the vibe. Melania plagiarizes with such a abandon, it would make Carlos Mencia blush. Mind of Mencia, mind of Melania. I smell a reboot. Comedy Central, call me, baby. Let's make a fucking deal. But despite all the depressing headlines coming out of Hollywood this week, and there were quite a few depressing headlines, to stick on this one, Amazon ended up spending apparently $35 million on marketing for the Melania documentary, and that's in addition to the $40 million production budget. So that's $75 million in total that Jeff Bezos paid for the Melania Trump documentary, directed by Brett Ratner. Aren't you embarrassed? That's embarrassing. Can you imagine having that much money and still being that much of a shameless bootlicker? It's pathetic. It's profoundly pathetic. And speaking of profoundly pathetic, there was also Darren Aronofsky's AI short film about the Revolutionary War. Did y'all hear about this? I'll give you the rundown here. Quote, Darren Aronofsky has a multi-part animated web series from AI studio Primordial Soup entitled On This Day ... 1776 that recreates moments from the American Revolutionary War. The short-form series combines traditional filmmaking tools, I have no idea what those would be, and emerging AI capabilities, including from Google's DeepMind AI division, to tell the stories about the Revolutionary War. Darren. Bro. What are you doing? What are you doing, you hack? You sellout? What the hell? Have y'all seen this thing too? It is, I mean, you know, of course it's bad, but it is shockingly bad. Shockingly bad. And I know Aronofsky's been up and down. I wasn't a big fan of Caught Stealing. But you made Pi, bro. You made Pi. And now you're typing prompts into Google. Can I see a low-angle shot of Ben Franklin in candlelight? Can I see a majestic shot of Washington crossing the Delaware? What the hell are you doing? Now is not the time for moral cowardice. This is the worst time for moral cowardice. You guys have to see this shit, though, if you haven't seen it. It is so bad. It is so bad. And then finally, the WGA authorized another strike. They're not on strike yet, but the members of the WGA voted to authorize, and of course that's the Writers Guild, voted to authorize a strike if it's deemed necessary, depending on how negotiations with the major studios and the streamers go in a couple weeks. And of course they're demanding completely reasonable things, fair wages, basic protections against AI. But we'll see. We'll see. And apparently their own leadership is not even representing them effectively. Reminds me of when when Ronald Reagan was the head of the Screen Actors Guild and just sold them out hard to the studios. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I really hope the writers don't have to go on strike again. But if they have to, they have to. Fuck these greedy studios, these greedy streamers. Pay your writers what they deserve. Keep them safe from this AI slop that Aronofsky wants to shove down our throats, apparently. So yeah, a lot of bad news coming out of Hollywood this week. A lot of bad news. But despite all of that bad news, I showed up to the AMC 16 on Saturday night with a skip in my fucking step, people, because I was about to see an absolute knockout double feature. First up, Jason Statham's annual January action movie about an ex-Special Forces commando saving a young girl from danger. Oh, that's the sweet spot. And then Sam Raimi's return to horror. And not just any horror, but to the exploitation B-movie textures of the Evil Dead movies and Drag Me to Hell. I could not wait to go to the movies on Saturday night. I couldn't wait. I didn't give a thought to that stupid Melania documentary. I walked past that towering fascistic advertisement and said, pfft. Who cares? I didn't give a thought to Brett Ratner. I didn't give a thought to Darren Aronofsky. I was going to the fucking movies, baby. I couldn't have been happier. And I wasn't alone. And this is the important part. The movie theater was humming. It was humming. There was a crowd of Gen Z brats. And I mean brat as in Brat Summer. There was a crowd of Gen Z brats there to see Charlie XCX's new movie, The Moment. They looked cool as hell. They're so fashionable and cool. They were there. Then there was the YouTube contingent there to see YouTuber Markiplier's directorial debut, the video game adaptation Iron Lung, which made back its $3 million budget in previews. It made back its entire production budget before its official release date, just on Thursday night screenings alone. More on that when we talk about the box office. it was a great weekend for the movies. Despite the Melania documentary, y'all didn't ruin. I know y'all live to just ruin shit. I know y'all live to just piss on people's parades. Didn't piss on my parade. I watched Shelter and Send Help, and I didn't think about y'all once. It was quite a weekend for the movies. A lot of possibilities in the air. A lot of directional arrows going this way and that way without any decisive outcomes. A lot of possibilities in the air. Quite a weekend. But the big takeaway for me, the headline, was that everyone I saw, myself included, was psyched to be at the movies. Psyched to be at the movies. And if you're a true movie lover, a true movie dog, and if you're listening to this show, you bet your ass you are, you know that a big part of being a movie lover is chasing a feeling. A feeling that you experienced in the past and want to experience again. A feeling that you experienced at the movies. Because on the one hand, for me at least, it's always enough just to be at the movies. It doesn't matter. I don't know if I've ever regretted going to the movies. And I sat through Chris Pratt's Mercy last week. Oh boy! I love going to the movies, period. But what I really love is when I go to the movies and I experience that feeling. That rush of pure cinema. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And even if the movies totally fell off the face of the earth, and I went to the movies for the next 10 years and didn't experience that feeling, I would still be going to movies in year 11 of the drought. Hoping, waiting, trusting that feeling would return someday. Being a movie lover is about chasing that feeling of pure cinema, because when you get it, and when you get it in a movie theater, there is nothing like it. And when I think about that feeling of pure cinema, the sensation of experiencing something that could only exist as a movie, pure cinema. When I think about that feeling, I'm not talking exclusively or even primarily about the premier works of the medium, the A-level stuff. Because the miracle of the movies is that they exist as essentially in their lower forms as in their higher forms. Pure cinema doesn't dilute just because it's in a B movie, not an A movie. Jason Statham's clenched jaw is as purely cinematic as The Passion of Joan of Arc. Pure cinema doesn't distinguish between high and low because it exists at a primordial level. It's like Hart Crane said in The Bridge, the greatest poetic work of the 20th century. Fuck you, Prufrock, and fuck you, Ezra Pound, you Nazi piece of shit. It's like Hart Crane said in The Bridge, and I quote, I don't have this memorized. I think of cinemas. I think of cinemas too, Hart Crane. It's all I think about for the most part. I think of cinemas, panoramic slights, with multitudes bent toward some flashing scene, never disclosed but hastened to again, foretold to other eyes on the same screen. That's it. That's fucking it right there. That's kind of the whole thing. never disclosed but hastened to again, foretold to other eyes on the same screen. The image that is both familiar and unknowable. The addictive, arcane image that is always there every 2.5 hours for everyone, that is seen millions of times and yet is never disclosed, never fully known. The accessible enigma of the movies. That's pure cinema. Movies cast a spell over us, and I mean that literally. I think movies are witchcraft because that's the only way for me to explain their power. And for me, that spell, the spell of movies, is at its most powerful in the realm of B movies, exploitation movies, drive-in movies, grindhouse movies. They've gone by many names over the years. I like B movies because it feels like the most all-encompassing. And I know that Roger Corman, the great Roger Corman, despised his nickname King of the B movies because to him, a true professional, B movie was a very specific industry term that referred to the weekly double features that studios released in the 30s and 40s. An A movie and a B movie. A practice that had long since gone out of fashion when Roger Corman started making movies in the mid-50s. And so in his mind, he had never made a single B movie, to take that phrase literally, much less enough to be crowned king of the B movies. But nevertheless, I think the term B movie can be used a little bit more generally. I think it transcends that limited historical context. For one, because the B movies that studios released in the 30s and 40s had a lot more in common than just being the second half of a double feature. They were made on small budgets. They didn't have A-list stars in them. They were typically genre movies, westerns, noirs, juvenile delinquency movies. And in lieu of A-list stars, B movies often relied on violence and sex and shock value, at least as much as the production code would have allowed in the 30s and 40s, and topicality and controversy. They relied on those elements to generate interest in lieu of Clark Gable, Barbara Stanwyck. Love Barbara Stanwyck. And so I like the term B movie because it encapsulates the spirit of cinema's underbelly. Exploitation movies, grindhouse movies, drive-in movies, straight-to-video movies. To me, they're all B movies. They're all the underbelly. The second half of the double feature. And another thing I love about B movies is that because of their reliance on genre tropes and because of their often refreshing lack of self-seriousness, B movies don't have the money or the time to be self-serious. Because of that, they are movies that feel like they're made out of other movies. And that's what makes them such perfect examples of pure cinema. They refer more to other movies and to the movies than they do to, I don't know, real life or whatever. And oftentimes they were literally made out of other movies. Roger Corman, in his autobiography, which I recommend, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime, writes about how when he was making his cycle of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations in the early 60s with Vincent Price, he's Roger Corman, so I think he made like 8 of them in 4 years. House of Usher, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Mask of the Red Death. When he was making these movies, he had a $20,000 production design budget per movie, which, even in the 60s, was a very small production design budget for a feature film. But Corman knew that the studios that he rented space at to make his movies, in this case, Raleigh Studios in Hollywood is where he made the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. These studios would let you use their scene docks for free. And a scene dock is just a massive storage area at a studio where you can store scenery and flats and props and stuff. And so after he made the first Poe adaptation, House of Usher, he stored that $20,000 worth of sets in the scene dock at Raleigh Studios. And then when he came back a couple months later to make The Pit and the Pendulum, he essentially now had a $40,000 production design budget because he had the $20,000 of stuff left over from House of Usher, plus a new $20,000 to spend on The Pit and the Pendulum. And by doing this over and over and over again, by the time he got to The Mask of the Red Death in 1964, he essentially had like a $100,000 production budget, even though the line item on the actual budget still said $20,000. That's why I love B movies. I love A movies too, but it's different. The thrill of watching a movie directed by Stanley Kubrick or Christopher Nolan is the thrill of watching a perfectionist execute a vision, their vision. The vision comes first. The budget and the shooting schedule and even the genre, if they're doing a genre movie or their version of a genre movie, all of that comes second to the director's vision. The perfect execution of the director's vision, no matter how much it costs or how long it takes. The thrill of watching a B movie, on the other hand, is that the conditions of making the movie come first. Genre, budget, timeline. We only have $500,000 in 2 weeks to make this movie. The conditions come first. The limitations come first. And it's not even that the great B movies transcend their limitations. It's that they find value in limitations. One of my favorite B movies from the golden age of Hollywood is 1945's Detour, directed by Edward G. Ulmer, about a man. How do I describe Detour? It's about a man hitchhiking to Hollywood to reconnect with his girlfriend who has gone there, I believe, to become a singer. And this guy just has one bad thing happen to him after another out there on the road. Some of it's not his fault. Some of it is. Detour is a movie that finds value in its limitations. It was shot in 6 days on a nothing budget. And you can feel that desperation, that urgency in the movie. It's a movie that operates on instinct. A movie that clings to its genre tropes. Because it has to. Because there's no time for anything else. It's a movie that benefits from not having A-list actors. Tom Neal, Ann Savage, They're perfect in this because they feel like people who are still searching for success, not people who have already found success. They're perfect for this movie. It couldn't have been anyone else. It couldn't have been a star. Because of their limitations, not in spite of them, B movies are one of the purest drugs for movie lovers, for movie dogs, like you and me. And so my question for this week's episode is, what happened to B movies? Do they still exist? Are they still around? If so, where can they be found? Where are they? And if not, what happened to them? Where'd they go? And I think this week is the perfect week to ask these questions because it was a week dominated by subplots at the box office. It was a week for the movie industry's underbelly, not its mainstream. We're not talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey this week. We're talking about a Jason Statham movie and a Sam Raimi horror movie and a propaganda documentary about the First Lady and a video game adaptation by a YouTuber. It was a very B-movie tier week at the movies. That being said, do any of these movies actually qualify in their essence as B movies? That's what we're going to talk about after the theme song.
The backbone of this country is the independent film critic. The power of movies must be protected. The best thing about movies is the feeling they give. It's a feeling I want to feel every day. Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg!
This is Movie Dawg, the weekly show that digs its teeth into the present, the past, and the future of the movies. I am Brett Boehm, aka the Georgia Movie Dog. Go Dogs! And I want to send out a special shout out to all of our Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much, Patreon subscribers. You can sign up for Patreon over at patreon.com/moviedogshow. That link is also in the episode description. Just click on that link, go over there. You can sign up for free and be part of our polls. Be part of our fantasy movie league next year. The train has already left the station on the 2026 movie fantasy league. But you can take part again next year. And you'll also get updates when we post bonus episodes on the Patreon. Last week, one of my favorite bonus episodes that we've ever done. I went back and looked at the movie Flyboys, a movie that surely would have just sort of disappeared into the dustbin of Hollywood's history, and for the most part has, except for one interesting footnote, which is the participation in the movie of David Ellison, who now runs Paramount because his dad bought it for him. Before he became the head of Paramount, David Ellison wanted to be an actor, and in 2006, his dad covered the entire production budget for a movie called Flyboys about World War I flying aces, with the condition that David be cast in a major role in the movie and that his production company Skydance, which is the company that purchased Paramount last year, that Skydance would be the producer of the movie and thus get its first production credit. And so in this bonus episode, I went back and looked at Flyboys, looked at David's performance in the movie, looked at the promotional tour around the movie as a way of understanding his original entry point into the Hollywood that he is now very much a major power player in. An interesting trajectory, but not so interesting when your dad has that much money. Or, it's interesting. Go listen to the episode. I didn't mean to say it wasn't interesting. Just not so mysterious. when your dad has that much money. But interesting nonetheless. It's a very interesting bonus episode. And if you haven't heard it yet, I think you should check it out. I had a lot of fun making it. And speaking of that fantasy league, I know some people who are going to want to be paying extra close attention to this week's episode and bonus episode, because I know at least one person drafted Send Help. I'll be rating Send Help today, reviewing and rating Send Help. And I know somebody drafted The Moment, Charlie XCX's new movie, The Moment. I'm not going to talk about that today because I haven't seen it yet, but that will most likely be part or all of this week's bonus episode, rating, reviewing, discussing Charlie XCX's The Moment. So stay tuned for that and sign up for Patreon at patreon.com/moviedogshow. Your generous, incredibly generous monetary support over there helps us, truly helps us to continue making this show, Movie Dog. And I appreciate it so much. And speaking of money, won't you please show me the money? And by that, I mean the weekend box office returns. There they are. There they are. Well, well, well. What the hell am I looking at here? This is easily one of the strangest box office weekends in recent memory. But there is a weird energy here that I kind of like. Coming in first with 20 million domestic and another 8 million internationally for an opening weekend worldwide total of $28 million, it's Sam Raimi's Send Help, which only had a production budget of 40 million. So congrats to Sam Raimi. On track for profit there. That is a strong opening weekend for Send Help. And it is a better than expected opening weekend. It was projected to do somewhere in the $14 to $18 million range domestically, and it did 20. So that's very cool. And holy shit, did it need every single penny of that 20 million domestic, because hot on its heels, breathing down its neck, final numbers might actually not be in yet. This might change. But currently in second is a video game adaptation called Iron Lung, which made 17.8 million domestic on a budget of, get this, $3 million. 17.8 million domestic opening weekend on a budget of $3 million. Congrats to Iron Lung. And if you want to know the state of American movies right now, just look at that distributor column there on this chart. The battle for box office supremacy this week came down to Disney, who distributed Send Help via 20th Century, which they own now, Disney, and Markiplier, a very popular YouTuber. Disney versus Markiplier. That is the future of the entertainment industry in a single dichotomy. And Disney barely won. Barely won. Markiplier, and by the way, I just found out who this person was last week. So please forgive me if A, I'm not pronouncing that right, or B, if this isn't the most accurate bio. But to my understanding, it's pronounced Markiplier. And Markiplier is a YouTuber who has gained a huge following over the last decade or so by doing the very popular genre of video game playthroughs. You watch him play a video game and he's funny about it, and he's sort of, he's vibing and he's bantering over the playthrough. People love it. And Markiplier specifically does playthroughs for mostly like indie horror video games, such as the very popular Five Nights at Freddy's, the playthroughs of which I think are more popular than the game itself. And of course, Iron Lung, this video game that he made a movie adaptation of. It's about a convict who is forced to pilot a submarine through an ocean of blood on the moon, and spooky stuff happens, etc., etc. So people love watching Markiplier play these games. And I will say, I've watched some Markiplier stuff. He does seem like a genuinely sweet guy, an endearing guy. He wrote, directed, edited, financed, and starred in a movie adaptation of the game Iron Lung that just made $18 million opening weekend. Congrats. That's amazing. How did he do this? Well, Markiplier has 38 million subscribers on YouTube. 38 million subscribers. That is a big, big audience. And the way that Markiplier was able to mobilize this online audience, he has been teasing, prepping his audience for this movie for, I think, years now. It took a while to get made. And the way that he was actually able, after all of this time, to get them out to the movies is wildly impressive. And much like the success of the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, the Minecraft movie, the success of Iron Lung points at a major misconception that I think the entertainment industry has about online audiences and gamers. The misconception is that you can't get them out of the house. They want to stay home and play their video games and watch their YouTubes. Well, Markiplier's got $18 million in the bank after one weekend that says otherwise, with more money on the way. And yes, of course, I have to say it. The quality of these movies is another question. But let's put that aside for a second. At a point in time when Hollywood is trying to solve the equation of putting butts in seats. How do we put butts in seats? And at a time when the old formulas, superhero movies, franchise movies, aren't really cutting it anymore, at least not like they used to, not relative to their budgets. This Iron Lung thing is a very interesting development because it says to me that YouTube and movie theaters are not antagonists. They are complementary. They are symbiotic. This is very interesting. And it'll probably be just as interesting to watch the major Hollywood studios learn all the wrong lessons from it. Melania. The documentary about Melania Trump, directed by sex pest Brett Ratner. Ugh, God. I wish the curse of being named Brett. Ratner, Kavanaugh. There are good ones too. Butler, I think. Oh, now I'm like terrified of reading her Wikipedia page. Brett Ratner actually had the biggest weekend he's had in a long time between the release of Melania and the release of the latest tranche of Epstein files in which he was featured prominently, including photographs. Now, Melania supposedly made $7 million this weekend, which would be the highest opening for a non-concert documentary in over a decade. That's assuming you can trust the numbers, because as often happens when a batshit right-wing movie makes a surprising amount of money at the box office, there are rumors that circulate online about tickets being bought up in bulk to give the appearance of success, presumably by someone in the MAGA inner circle, but that actual people, IRL, are not actually going to see this movie, at least not to the tune of $7 million. And sure, that happens. It happened with Don Jr.'s book. Remember Triggered? They were just buying up the RNC, I think, was just buying up boatloads, just buying up just crates of Triggered to get it on the New York Times bestseller list. I will say, and I hope I'm not bumming anyone out here, but we have to be honest, I don't think that's what's happening here. I was reading a lot about this, looking at the numbers, reading the takes of some box office experts. And I think what actually happened is that red state audiences came out to this movie in fucking droves. If you look at the numbers in Texas, in Florida, I'm pretty sure the entire Fort Myers, Naples metropolitan area came out for this movie this weekend. And this is an important point because on the one hand, I believe that every criticism of Donald Trump and the Trump family is completely justified and earned and not even enough. But the one line of criticism that I feel like is misguided is when people try to depict Trump as unpopular. Oh, his rally in Des Moines was only at half capacity. And believe me, I get it. It comes from a desire to humiliate him. I share that desire. I would love nothing more to humiliate Donald Trump. But I think one of the reasons for Trump's success all along has been that people who despise him underestimate his popularity. And it keeps happening. I think it's happening again with this Melania documentary. Is that $7 million number slightly inflated by some shady bulk ticket purchases? Probably, maybe. Did a shit ton of people in this country go out and see a documentary about the First Lady? I think they did. I think that's also true. And I think it's important that the rest of us acknowledge that and remember it. Because what it says to me is that this battle is far from over. Far from over. We always say MAGA is a cult, and it is. How do you think a cult acts? They're going to see the cult leader's documentary. Maybe the worst part of all of this is that frickin' Melania documentary beat out Jason Statham's Shelter. What is this world coming to? Not a great opening for Jason Statham's Shelter. 5.5 million domestic, coming in 5th behind Zootopia 2 in its 10th week. It did add another 7.5 internationally for a worldwide total of 13 million. So it beat Melania in the worldwide total. But this is Jason Statham's worst opening in 18 years. Oh, come on. Why? I'm sorry, Jason. This sad old world doesn't deserve you. But it's Statham. He'll live to fight another day. Beekeeper 2's on track for next year. Fingers crossed. He'll be fine. He'll be back on top, baby. Overall, though, thanks to this weird weekend, the box office, after 1 month, is up 12% over this same time last year. So it is a great start to what I think will end up being the biggest box office year since COVID. Perhaps by a lot. We'll see. But enough about the money. Are these movies any good? Let's talk about Send Help, directed by Sam Raimi, from a script by horror screenwriters Mark Swift and Damian Shannon. This movie stars Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien as an underappreciated employee and her asshole boss, respectively, who become stranded on a deserted island after a plane crash, and they attempt to survive while tension rises between them. Going into this movie, like I said in the opening, I was very excited for Send Help. The trailer looked great, and it's been a minute since Sam Raimi just put his whole ass into a movie. Really, it's not since 2009, since Drag Me to Hell. Since then, all he's done is that Wizard of Oz movie with James Franco and one of the Ant-Man movies. Was it Ant-Man or was it no, it was Doctor Strange. Was it? It was Doctor Strange. Yeah. Anyway, he did a Marvel movie and he did the James Franco Wizard of Oz movie. It's been a while. 2009 since we got like a real Sam Raimi movie. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited for Send Help, to see Raimi go back to his roots, to go back to the horror B-movie energy of Evil Dead and Darkman and Drag Me to Hell. And for the most part, Send Help did not disappoint. The filmmaking, the energy of the filmmaking reminded me a lot of 28 Years Later, where you saw Danny Boyle just turn back the clock, turn back that old clock, and revive the energy of his early movies. Similarly, this is a real turn back the clock movie for Sam Raimi. He seems energized. The movie really zips. He's pulling out his full bag of tricks. The camera's zipping all over the place. It's in the POV of a wild boar. Then it's racking through a spider web. He's doing time-lapse montages. He's doing dream sequences. He's mixing horror with comedy, with satire. It was really fun to see Sam Raimi this loose and energized again. And likewise, the performances are so much fun. Rachel McAdams crushing every single line read. And Dylan O'Brien is great. I really like Dylan O'Brien. I loved him last year in Twinless. And he is great here as the asshole boss, the Nepo baby. But he's also this sort of sad, broken guy. But then the second you sympathize with him, he flips again. He has like 8 heel turns in this movie, and he nails them all. And that central energy in this movie that radiates off of the triumvirate of Raimi and McAdams and Dylan O'Brien, that cinematic energy outweighs the movie's flaws. And there are some flaws. What are they? What are these so-called flaws? Tell us. To me, Send Help needed 1 or 2 more big horror adventure set pieces. It was a little lacking in that area, and I was surprised because I thought it would have been. It's something that Sam Raimi loves to do. Drag Me to Hell is just one crazy, wild set piece after another. And Send Help does have a killer one. There's an incredible scene, the best scene in the movie, where Rachel McAdams hunts and kills a wild boar. And it's just classic Raimi. It escalates and escalates and escalates. It's gory, but it's fun and it's funny. The audience was losing their minds. But it's also not like so fun and funny that it loses its power. It's still very visceral. It's really bloody. It's great. It's the best scene in the movie. And it happens fairly early on, and I was expecting like 1 or 2 more big set pieces like that. I was expecting them to even escalate beyond the wild boar scene, but they just never came. They never really materialized. Likewise, the chess match between Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien on the island is a little underwhelming. Their individual performances are great, and they have a great dynamic, but in a movie like this, the chess match is so important, and in Send Help, the chess match was a little underwhelming. they just sort of keep underestimating each other in ways that ultimately stretch credulity. Whereas I would have much preferred to see them outsmarting each other, one-upping each other in ways that also stayed ahead of the audience. But Send Help never really gets ahead of its audience. And ultimately is a little unambitious and unimaginative at the level of story. But it's still so fun, and there's such an energy here. There's such a dynamic energy. There's some B-movie flavor. There's some exploitation movie flavor. There's some classic Sam Raimi flavor in here. And ultimately, the real strength of the movie is that it doesn't suffer too much from those weaknesses that would have sunk a less dynamic movie. But just through sheer force of charisma and confidence at the level of direction and the level of performance, this movie's really good. I had a blast at Send Help. I give it 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars. So if you picked it in fantasy, that's not bad. That's a solid opening. 3.5 stars. Now, what about Shelter, starring Jason Statham, my guy? You know I love a Jason Statham movie. Last year, when A Working Man came out, the Philly Movie Freak and I did a ranking of our favorite Stathams. And we also broke down the taxonomy of the Jason Statham cinematic universe. I won't repeat all of that here. You should go back and find that episode on the Patreon if you're a Statham fan. But I will generally break Statham's movies down into 2 broad categories for the purpose of this Shelter review. On the one hand, you have the campier Stathams, your Cranks, your Beekeepers, your Transporter 2s, your Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerres. And on the other hand, you have your more dour, more melancholy, more earnest, more emotional Stathams. Your Wrath of Mans, your Homefronts, your Hummingbirds. Where are my hummingbird heads at? And this movie, Shelter, falls decisively into the latter camp. It is a more dour, but ultimately earnest and emotional Statham. And although I prefer the campier Stathams, this movie, Shelter, is one of the best non-campy Stathams I've ever seen. And I've seen them all. I really enjoyed Shelter. And part of the pleasure, a big part of the pleasure of a Jason Statham movie, is in the familiarity of the plot. Jason Statham is ex-Special Forces. He has to go into hiding after he butts heads with a corrupt bureaucrat. This happens before the movie starts. The bad guys ultimately find him. Of course they do. A young girl gets caught in the middle of it all. Statham has to save the girl and beat the bad guys. Have I seen this movie before? Yes, I have. Many times. Do I want to see it again? You bet your ass I do. Many times. I don't want Jason Statham to change. Jason Statham is one of the few constants I have left in this world. He's one of the few constants any of us have left in this world. I want Statham to be Statham. And in Shelter, he is himself in full. In full. One of my favorite parts about a Jason Statham movie is finding out what his job is. The job that he takes when he goes into hiding. Because we know what he really is. He's ex-Special Forces. He's a killing machine with a heart. But I love finding out when he went into hiding, what job he assumed. In The Beekeeper, of course, he's a beekeeper. In The Transporter, he's a transporter. He's a driver. And in Shelter, he's a motherfucking lighthouse operator, baby! Hey! That's right. Statham fans, get ready to feast. When Shelter opened on an aerial tracking shot of a very cold-looking sea, and then it panned up to reveal a decrepit old lighthouse, and then it cut to reveal Jason Statham standing at the top of that lighthouse in profile, looking out over that very cold sea. People, my fellow movie dogs, it took every ounce of strength I had to not stand up in my seat at the AMC 16 and cheer. And in my mind, that's exactly what I was doing. He's a lighthouse operator. That's perfect. In the Hebrides. Beyond that, which is just the first, 10 minutes of the movie. Beyond that, Shelter has a lot to like about it. One thing it has that you don't always find in a Statham movie: lots of British acting royalty. There are some heavy hitters in this movie. And when they show up, you're like, damn! And of course, because everything I read about Statham says that he's the nicest, most professional guy to work with. And his movies are fun as hell. Why wouldn't Bill Nighy want to be in this movie? Why wouldn't Harriet Walter want to be in this movie? Why wouldn't Mike Lee veteran Daniel Mays not want to be in this movie? Naomi Ackie is in this movie. She's one of the hottest actors on the face of the earth. She's in this movie. And by having these actors in this movie, particularly Bill Nighy and Naomi Ackie, we also get some really slick spycraft, some slick MI6 British spycraft in this movie, which is also not always part of the Jason Statham formula. It's not at the level of Black Bag, Soderbergh's Black Bag from last year. But it's still pretty good. It's some nice, slick MI6 British spycraft. Also, the relationship between Statham and the young girl who he's protecting is very moving. It's very moving. They really develop a genuinely moving relationship. They depend on each other. The way she grows to depend on him. It's moving. It's very moving. And Statham is also doing what Statham does best. He is one of the all-time great fight choreography performers. He is, and it owes to his past life. He was a professional. He was a diver, like off the high dive, like Greg Louganis. He was a diver, and he was on the British national team before he became an actor. He's also, I believe, a model, a dancer. This is a guy who knows how to move and use his body. And he has kept that instrument so finely tuned over the years. His fight scenes are just works of art. They are always so precise, and he sells everything for the screen so effectively. He knows how to sell fight choreography on screen in such an elegant way that doesn't sacrifice its brutality and visceralness. You still feel the fight, but it's also like a ballet. It's so beautiful. His fight, they're just so coherent and clear. They never get muddled. They're precise and fluid from start to finish. Love watching him in fight scenes. So in summary, is Shelter a generic Jason Statham movie? And I mean that in the literal sense of the word, not in any sort of pejorative sense. Yes. It's one of the most generic Jason Statham movies I've ever seen. Is it also one of the better Jason Statham movies? Having seen literally all of them, I would say yes. Yes, it is one of the better ones. I would put it in the top half of his filmography. And if you like Statham, do not miss Shelter. 3 stars. It was good. It was good. But is it a B movie? Are any of the movies that came out this weekend B movies? I'm not talking about Jerry Seinfeld's B movie. Do B movies still exist? I want to end this episode where it began, talking about B movies. And when we're evaluating the movies of the present in the context of the B movies of the past, there are a couple things here to consider. Number one, exhibition. Where are the movies being shown, seen, witnessed? If you look at the history of B movies, a big part of B movies is that they were often defined by how they were exhibited. B movies aren't anywhere, anytime kinds of movies. They aren't art house movies. They thrive in specific contexts and specific spaces. Originally, it was, as I said before, as the second half of a studio double feature. Okay, you saw the prestige picture. Now everyone loosen their suspenders, because here comes the wild, wacky, cheap-ass B movie. Then it was drive-ins. For a long time in the 50s, 60s, drive-ins were the home for B movies. Teenagers don't want to see Random Harvest while they're making out and sipping stolen whiskey from a flask. They want to see Attack of the Crab Monsters. And then it was grindhouse theaters, the kind of place that Quentin Tarantino was raised in. After the production code, the strict production code that didn't let you do anything in movies, after that ended in the 60s, these grindhouse theaters started popping up everywhere that specialized in exploitation films. The 70s version of B movies. Sex, gore, mayhem, 24/7, and not a Merchant Ivory movie in sight. I love Merchant Ivory movies. And then in the 80s, after the rise of suburban megaplexes basically wiped out grindhouse theaters, the demand for grindhouse theaters and drive-ins, B movies thrived on video. Entire production companies and careers were born overnight, specializing in straight-to-video horror and sword and sorcery and sci-fi. And so the question is then, when you look at the current state of film exhibition and distribution in 2026, when you look at the state of physical media in 2026, where could B movies even thrive now or survive now? Where is their home? What is the drive-in or the grindhouse theater or the video rental store of 2016? I think, and this is going to sound absurd based on the current state of things, I think the answer should be streaming. In a perfect world, a perfect movie world, streaming would be the place for B movies. Because just as B movies thrived on video, I think they could thrive on streaming. Wouldn't it be amazing if Netflix was just chock full of like grindhouse movies and exploitation movies? That's perfect for streaming. Cheaper budgets. Stay home and watch whatever just disgusting shit Netflix has put out this week. Wouldn't you rather live in that world? And also, doesn't that sound kind of right? Doesn't that sound like everything in its right place? But these damn streamers are too Silicon Valley minded. They're too reputation obsessed. They're too power hungry. They're too narcissistic to be a home for B movies. They're too obsessed with being quote unquote alphas to understand the pleasures of being beta. Last week, here's an example. Last week I watched The Wrecking Crew, a straight to Amazon Prime movie starring Jason Momoa and Dave Bautista. It's a buddy cop action comedy thing. It takes place in Hawaii. And it's very Hawaii centric, very sort of Hawaiian culture centric. And I liked it a lot. I liked The Wrecking Crew a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's got some nice, like, hyper violence in it. Momoa and Bautista are fun together. But the whole time I also found myself wishing that it had indulged its B-movie instincts more fully. Because it felt like a fun, good movie, maybe even really good, that was being held back, that was being reined in. I wish it had been more comfortable in its B-movie skin. I wish it had said to Amazon, "Fuck you, Dad. I'm a B-movie. And I'll always be a B-movie. And if you can't accept that, you don't deserve to be my dad." Because when people talk about the threat that the streamers pose, they're always talking about the threat to movie theaters. But when are we going to start talking about what the streamers have really deprived us of? A new era of B movies. So I say to you, Netflix, Prime, Hulu, Apple, stop worrying about IP. Stop worrying about world domination. It's boring. It's pathetic. Stop trying to make Oscar bait. Do what you were born to do. Churn out glorious slop like your lives depended on it. Hey, Ted Sarandos, here's an idea. 90% of the movies you produce should be sleepover slashers. Be yourself. So that's one thing that I think has led to the decline of B movies is there's nowhere for them to live. I will say the one major exception to that is in recent years, these smaller studios and production companies who are wisely taking advantage of the declining fortunes of the major studios in order to get their smaller, cheaper movies into theaters. The best, most recent example of this would be the success that Cineverse had with Terrifier 3 and the Terrifier franchise as a whole. Remember, Terrifier 3 in its opening weekend beat Joker Folie à Deux in only its second weekend. That would have been an impossible thought 3, 4, 5 years ago. It was an impossible thought literally up until it happened last year. Or sorry, this was 2 years ago at this point. 2 years ago. Time. The other factor that has led to the decline in B movies, pure B movies, is that starting with Jaws in 1975, B movies over the last 50 years have been absorbed into the mainstream. The mainstream world of A movies, A-tier movies, used to look down on B movies. This is, what Roger Corman writes of as the B movie golden age, when they were treated as lesser than, and thus had the freedom to do whatever they wanted to do. But then starting with Jaws, the mainstream said, "Ooh, we want that. We're doing B movies now." Corman also makes the interesting point in his autobiography that when the major Hollywood studios discovered the potential of the summer blockbuster in the late 70s with Jaws and with Star Wars, the response of Corman and his colleagues in the B-movie world was, duh, what took you so long? Because going back to the 50s, every year, Corman would try and come up with a titillating summer movie for teenagers that would crush at the drive-in. Because, duh, of course. It was nothing new to Corman. It was one of his oldest strategies. And you can also argue that there is a lot of... that the movies have benefited. There's a lot of good that's coming out, that has come out of the studios embracing B-movies, making their own version of B-movies, embracing genre, not looking down on genre. That's how we get Spielberg and Lucas's filmographies. Not to mention decade upon decade of fun as hell summer blockbusters. But on the flip side, studios never allow themselves to be as wild, as free, as reckless, as cheap, as gratuitous as the true B-movie auteurs. And since the studios have embraced B-movies, there has been an inevitable watering down of what made B-movies so unique and so compelling in the first place. To continue the argument from last week's episode, Hollywood is ultimately, despite its liberal reputation, too conservative at heart to fully indulge in the thrills and chills of the bees. But the demand is still there. The movie-going public's desire for those thrills and chills hasn't gone away just because it isn't being served as much. I saw it firsthand on Saturday night. I saw it firsthand when I was watching Send Help in a crowded theater. They loved the B-movie schlockiness of seeing Rachel McAdams gouge that wild boar's eye out as it covered her in a geyser of blood and bile. They loved it. The theater was rocking. It was ecstatic. So, is Send Help a B-movie? Yeah, kind of. Kind of. I will say it is the most B-movie parts of the movie that my audience liked the most. When it was at its most B-movie, that's when it was hitting the hardest, getting the best response. What about Markiplier's Iron Lung? Is that a B-movie? Is Iron Lung a B-movie? Not as much. I will say no. I mean, it didn't cost that much, and its production limitations are evident. But it's just, I don't know, it's just a little too self-serious. Not quite wild enough, not quite freaky enough to capture that B-movie spirit. But I will say, like Send Help, I do think that it tapped into the public's desire for B-movies, for movies that are off-center, that are unhampered by the major studio apparatus. Movies that feel more handmade, less manufactured. I don't think that Iron Lung is a B-movie, but I do think, like Send Help, it revealed the public's desire for B-movies. And strike me dead, kind of the same with Melania. And no, I don't want to know what kind of B-movies would drive the residents of Fort Myers and Naples wild. But I know they don't want the A movies. Picture this. The 2017 Women's March meets Last House on the Left. Directed by Brett Ratner. Written by James Toback. The Naples, Florida AMC 12 is sold out for weeks. So all in all, to summarize, I don't know if I saw any pure B movies this weekend. But I do know that there is an opportunity for a resurgence of B movies. I think the time is right. I think people want them. I think people want that B movie energy. I think it matches the time. That beautiful cheapness and irreverence, that silliness, that wildness, that pure, disgusting, exhilarating cinema. Listen up, Hollywood. I'm giving you a great idea. Bring back the B movie. Or actually, even better, stay the fuck out of the way and let other people bring back the B movies. And it feels like they kind of are. It feels like that's where something like the old B movies is resurrecting itself. Where it began in the movie theaters. But it's not going to happen on the streamers. This has been Movie Dawg. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. You can sign up for free. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial. We got another bonus episode coming your way this week, like every week. That's only for subscribers. Plus lots of other fun stuff on there. I put up a poll this week. What's your favorite Sam Raimi movie? There's a great discussion going on about that. I love and there's no such thing as like, oh, this answer's too obvious or this and that. You just be honest. That's all you got to worry about. And so I love the people saying, you know what? I got to be honest. It's Evil Dead 2. It's such a masterpiece. It's Evil Dead 2. But then I also love people saying, you know what? If I had to sit down right now, this is always a good test. This is what the freak always says. If I just sit down right now on streaming and pick one Raimi movie to watch, what would I pick? You know what it would be? The Quick and the Dead. The Quick and the Dead. That's my favorite Sam Raimi movie. I love it. I love the conversation going on. And if you're a movie dog, if you're a real movie lover, you're going to want to be part of the conversation that's going on Patreon. You'll meet other great movie dogs over there, other great movie lovers. It's such a fun community. And I want everyone to be a part of it, everyone that listens to this show. And then next week on the main show on Movie Dawg, oh boy, am I excited for this one. Pillion! Oh, I've been waiting for this since Alexander Skarsgård walked the Cannes red carpet in those black leather pants and that saucy S&M t-shirt. I cannot wait to finally see Pillion. And I'm also going to be talking about the history of S&M on screen and where Pillion fits into it all. I cannot wait. I'll see you there. Bye.